What's going on, guys? Sensible Prepper Live. We are live with Robbie Wheaton.
Good to be here.
Wheaton Arms also has the Robbie Wheaton YouTube channel and been a gunsmith for a long time. Been a long time. And also was a Marine and just a good guy.
Boy Scouts for big kids.
Boy Scouts for big kids. You Boy Scouts for big kids. We also have Sarah Mack over on the computer, and she will be taking questions today. We are going to do a Q&A. We're going to talk a little bit first about some things to kind of preface it, but we're going to get into some questions because we have had so many questions on this topic already, but we've had so much information.
Mm-hmm.
So we really haven't been able to get the questions like we wanted to. So we just thought we'd do a Q&A today.
I'm excited about it. I'm really looking forward to it because you guys always have such good questions. I'm looking forward to some really good content from you guys today, some great stuff to talk about, and maybe some things that we've missed that y'all experienced that we haven't.
Yeah. I'm excited because hopefully we'll have answers.
Yeah.
If not, we'll have an open question. We can all research it. And plus, that takes all the hard work out of what we're doing. But anyway, glad to have you here. We are going to talk about some of the experiences. There is a video coming. In fact, it should be up really soon about power in particular that we accessed through Helene. Now, again, we are in the upstate of South Carolina. We experienced some extensive damage, and we were out of power for a week and out of internet for almost 2 weeks.
3 for me.
Yeah. Well, you had power back faster than I did. So
it's give and take.
Yeah. But it was a lot. There were a lot of trees down. There was a lot of hard work, a lot of rain, but Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee were devastated and are still devastated. And one thing I really want to point out is to continue support for those areas. There are still people that are trapped in some of the higher areas. They just can't get to them. And a lot of people have died. The numbers that they're showing on the news and on these official reports is not up to date because they can't identify a lot of the bodies. So with that being said, please, if you will support those people, there's a number of organizations. Samaritan's Purse is probably one of the best up there. So
and that's literally in their headquarters backyard.
Yeah, they are out of Black Mountain. So that was a devastated area there. So there's a lot going on there. We had sent up some stuff recently, just sending up packages, trying to just do what we can. But with that being said, the one thing, and we've been talking about this now for 3 weeks because there's just a lot of information. Let me tell you guys, we were again without power for a week. We have tested a lot of stuff with overnight power outages or, a day or two. But when it gets into a week, and it was actually a little over a week, there is a lot of things that really test your preps. And a lot of times in theory, sounds real good, but when you're actually living it day to day, it'll really bring things to bear. I mean, it really kind of opens up your eyes. There's what we're going to be talking about on a long form video to be coming up again. I'm finishing part of that up today. Is that we had different power sources, and we were able to see real time what we needed, what was going on. And one thing that we'll talk about in the video is that some of our upgrades that we're planning. And I know, Robbie, you guys have a lot of upgrades coming up as well.
We do. We're one of the big things with us, especially being without internet that long, was having a backup to our internet. So we ordered a Starlink system to be able to set that up. So we have a dedicated backup internet. Even we have Spectrum, and it's still on and off. It works and then it goes down. I think it was down last night. It's down again today.
Really?
And they can't give you any kind of update on it. There's tons of people in the upstate here that are still without internet with Charter, and Charter can't give any kind of reason why it's down. They said it's something to do with their system internally. Hasn't been able to reconnect. So we've ordered a Starlink. We're getting an updated system, a backup system for that. But one of the big things that we were looking at, not only with a whole home generator, gas generator on natural gas to be able to power everything in our house was having another backup system for our hot water heater, because there's nothing worse than taking an ice cold shower.
I experienced quite a few this week.
You do what you have to do to keep yourself clean, but an ice cold shower is no fun for anyone. So we're looking at some different ways that we can power our hot water heater with either a backup generator or with solar.
Right.
So that way we can at least have hot water to be able to take a shower,
and
multiple ways to run that hot water heater is one of the big things. If the whole home generator is down because we don't have natural gas, then we wanted to have a backup to the backup to be able to run the hot water heater.
Well, that's one thing that was a big deal. I know with this past week was redundancy. You think, okay, I've got a generator, I'm good. But if you can't get gas, you're not any good. One thing that we are going to do is get a dual fuel. And so we're going with propane and gasoline. Well, I do want to take a break here and mention that if you have questions, go ahead and you can ask them. And Sarah Mack is taking note right now. So don't wait till we open up for questions, because there are going to be a lot of people in front of you. So go ahead and get those questions, and then we're going to start in just a second. But that was one thing we really talked about was the redundancy. We had a gas generator. We had solar. We had an EcoFlow generator, which was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And we had some other things, had solar panels. But again, cloudy days, we ended up hooking up our gas generator to our solar power generator, and it worked. And so we came out of it really well, because honestly, when everything was said and done, it was a great exercise. I can't say that for a lot of people that had to deal with things,
or still dealing with things,
that were having to deal, cooking and lighting and, burning a few candles and doing whatever, and maybe getting by. And let's face it, in our area, we weren't in a life-threatening situation unless a tree fell through your house, which that happened quite a bit. But we weren't really, it was all things considered, it was a great experience. Just overall, it was a great experience. And so it really helped us to be able to convey to you some things that are very important. And I think that's the big thing. We're going to go to some questions here in just a second. Before we do, I do want to mention Exotech. Some of the best fire starters, in fact, not some of, these are the best fire starters on the market, and they're made down in Winder, Georgia. They do a tremendous job. You really should have a fire kit. One thing that we've learned, even though I didn't have to get out a fire kit, well, I did actually. To get a lighter started, to get a grill started, I was using a lighter and some different things. But fire is essential. Cooks your food, boils your water, gives you heat, gives you light. Keeps predators at bay. Having a fire kit is great. So you want to check out Exotech, 15% off, no, 20% off using Sootch 20 with the link down below in the description. Build yourself a fire kit. All right, if we've got some questions, we'll go ahead.
Nick Cower asks, howdy from Florida. What items and activities do you recommend related to spiritual prepping? Asking for a Protestant Christian Episcopalian perspective.
I'll tell you, yesterday I was sitting on X, and I was going to mention something about the upcoming election and just the consternation, just the sense of dread, a little bit of sense of fear, not knowing, because it's not like, oh, I kind of don't like this guy, but this guy, it is a diametrically opposed philosophy when it comes to governance.
Good versus evil, almost.
Yeah,
it really is.
And I kept thinking, what do I want to say here? I don't want to come across as I'm afraid, but in some senses, I do have some very deep concerns. And I came across Matthew 3:6, I believe it was, and I may be misquoting the reference, but in Matthew, when Jesus was talking, he said, don't worry about tomorrow. He goes, because tomorrow is going to take care of itself. Focus on what you've got in front of you today, because there's enough to deal with just today. And of course, this is a massive paraphrase, but and it's a very familiar verse in the Bible. But don't be fearful. Take care of the things that are in front of you. Don't worry about what's going on in the nation, in the world, and all these places. Yes, they can affect us. They do affect us. But there's nothing you can really do about it. So what you do is the things that you can do. And the first thing you can do is to be a good person to those that are around you in your circle. And that's where really Christ comes in, is taking people and loving them. And when somebody's in need, taking care of that need, reaching out to people. But let's face it, Noah prepared for the flood. Moses, when they were going out, of Egypt, God provided for them by the Egyptians just giving them gold and silver and different jewelry and stuff, and they were able to go and to live. And then God prepared the way for them. And here's the thing, guys, do what you can do, but then don't worry, because God's going to take care of the rest. So, but definitely prepping. And one thing I'll tell you, as far as Christians go, when there was a point when Trump was here and the economy was booming and things were going great, and I honestly started questioning what I was doing on my Sensible Prepper channel. I started questioning it. Am I just leading these people to just buy things that, that they're not going to need? And is everything going to work out? And is God moving? This was in 2019 and toward the middle. And then all of a sudden I just said, God, I want to know. I will quit. I will stop the channel right now. And that's a financial loss for us. But I'm not going to be talking about things that I don't truly believe in and that I don't truly feel is right. And I'll never forget it. I was walking across my yard. I was going over to my house. And all of a sudden, I just said, God, I need an answer. And it was like this. And of course, it wasn't a voice, but it was definitely a presence. And it was like, keep doing what you're doing. The next week, COVID hit. And everything went nuts. We prepped. Listen, as Christians, we prepped for COVID when we got into it. We ran up there and got toilet paper. We did all these things. So don't think that, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. Because, you need to be thinking. And two, it also gives you an avenue and the ability to help others. So that's my answer.
Wade Hoagland asks, what was the most useful thing that was used for the duration? Better yet, what is now a new priority with hindsight?
Well, for me, and I'll let Robbie go next, but for me, the EcoFlow, now the gas generator, if I only had one generator, it would be the gas because it was so dependable, but the EcoFlow not only surpassed our expectations, and it's the base model. So what we're going to do, we're getting ready to upgrade our EcoFlow system. It's portable. It's really great. I've heard tons of things. And two, I have friends that have them that are saying the exact same thing. They're just great systems. So the power and being able to have power, that was huge. Plus, it kept our refrigerator. The EcoFlow would power our freezer, because we tested it before, 16 to 17 hours on a full charge battery. That's a lot. Considering, too, you get to break that up. You don't do it the whole time. So EcoFlow, number one. Number two is the BioLite. BioLite has a little solar panel, has a little base, and it has, in this one particular one, has 3 different lights. We charged it, even on cloudy days, it charged up beautifully because we didn't have a way to even plug in anything. We'd lost the cord. So we were dependent on solar, and man, that thing is great. It's the BioLite. I got it from Sportsman's Guide a few years ago, and I did a full review on it. But man, we were super impressed with that. It's 2 things we really liked.
Number one for me was our new water filtration system that we put in. Water is life. You have to have water. And within just a few days of the storm, I could turn on our tap, and the water coming straight out of our tap, it smelled very earthy. There was an earthy smell to it. Right. And I mean, to the point that there's no way that I would have drank it straight out of the tap. And then a couple of days after that, it smelled like I was running straight bleach out of my tap with all the chlorine that they were putting in it, trying to clean the water. So having our water filtration system that cleaned all of the chlorine out of it, that cleaned all of the sediment and everything out of it, to me was the most important thing that we had. And then number 2 was generators. Having generators to be able to power everything in our house, keep our refrigerators going, was a huge one, because just a couple of days without power and you've lost all of your frozen goods and your refrigerated goods. So having the generator to keep the refrigerators going, and then the water filtration system, so we had clean drinking water and didn't have to try and boil the water, because Boiling water works, but it's very time consuming and very energy inefficient. So having that water filtration system to be able to provide great drinking water for us was number one for me.
Lucky 15 driver says, question, do you think a whole house generator that runs on natural gas is worth adding a propane conversion to it?
Yes.
100%.
Yes. And I would not have answered yes so quickly before. In Asheville, North Carolina, all the natural gas, we have a number of friends that have these Generac big home generators. They've got natural gas going to it. And I'm thinking that's just the way to do it. We can't get natural gas on our road. We tried to do that, but
plenty
we can't.
of gas on your road, but just no
there's a lot of gas on our road, a lot of hot air. But the one thing in Asheville was because of the extensive damage, they had to shut the lines down. So people that thought, hey, I've got natural gas, it's buried, so I don't have to worry about it. All of a sudden, they don't have it. So yes, I think that having a backup and propane, guys, I am all about propane because it stores, it's safe. It's different than gasoline.
It's very stable.
Have some gas.
Yeah, it doesn't go bad. If it sits in your building for a year and you don't use it, it's not going to go bad. It's still going to be just
5-6 years,
good. Right.
10 years.
Exactly.
It's safe.
I just chose a year because that's usually about how long gasoline lasts before it tanks on you.
Right. Gas will be, you got to put stable in it, and even then, you're going to lose it. Propane, you can store it, you can buy it, and all that kind of stuff. So I think, and that's one reason why we're getting a dual fuel generator. Because we can use gas or propane, and you can get tri-fuel where you can actually hook up natural gas to it.
That's right.
So those are the kind of things that, if you run out of gas, thank God we did have gas. We could go to other exits up above us or below us. We could get gasoline, but we could get propane, but propane was going fast and you had to wait in long lines. So I had my propane already stored up, went and got more gas just to make sure we had it. So
yeah, and something to always remember, anytime there's any sort of natural disaster, whether it's flooding or earthquakes or whatever, one of the first things that's going to get shut off is the natural gas to prevent fires. So it's natural gas is great when you have it, but you definitely need to have a backup to it in case there is a natural disaster and that gas source does get shut down.
Nick Howard asks, do you recommend that prepping community camp a few times per year in different conditions to test basic supplies and skills? Yes,
that is a great lesson to learn. It's funny going camping. I mean, you're pretty much off grid.
Yeah.
You're living off grid. You're doing things. With prepping, you have a little more supply. I mean, you have, you're at your base. You can do things. So, camping is one of the best things, especially if you're in a bug out situation, camping in your car, even trying some things, any kind of exercise. One thing that we did, and we haven't done a full night going out and camping like we talked about this with our prepper group. But, a few years ago, we actually rendezvoused in a bug out situation where we loaded stuff in our vehicles and we met at a certain location. And we had about 30 people. We joined together. It's on the channel. And it was really cool. And then Scott Hunt from who does Practical Preppers that did the Doomsday Prepping, he was the one that analyzed the preppers. He went through and checked each car and kind of gave us a rundown on some things to have. So, yes. And really what's important with this whole thing is just a group in itself. People are going to be your biggest asset. And I know a lot of times people are like, well, I ain't got enough food to feed everybody. But people are going to be your biggest asset because security is going to be vital, especially after a while. The one thing that happened in the mountains of Western North Carolina is there was so much outside coming in. But if there hadn't been, those people would have gone nuts. I mean, it would have been crazy.
One of the big things, I love camping in the fall and the winter. Not a huge fan of camping in the summertime when it's 100 degrees outside, but I love camping in the fall and the winter. One of the problems we're having right now is just trying to find a place to camp because most of your state parks are still closed. Most of your campgrounds are still closed, or they're slam full with people that have been displaced because of the natural disaster here. So, my plans that I'd had for camping in November and December, we've had to push those out because of the natural disaster here. There's just not places for us to camp right now.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Oh.
But something else to look at is you can camp at home, hit the main breaker on your house and kill the power to your house and spend 3 or 4 days testing all of your preps at home. It's a great opportunity to be able to do the same things that you would do out in the woods, but you can just hit that breaker and do the same thing at home and test your preps at home too.
Yeah, you really learn a lot about what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you're like, oh, I've got that covered, and you realize you don't. So great. That's a great point.
So these questions are kind of similar. So I'm going to kind of just throw them out there.
Okay.
So John Latt says, most likely to be used and proficient at alternate communications, GRMS versus ham, the myth of Baofeng proficiency just because you may own one. Mike Sanders says, heard that communications has been a huge challenge as well. What are basics we should attempt to cover? Should we only do FRS or go full ham radios and licenses? And then Cam Perry asks, what emergency radio do you guys use?
I'll jump in on this one first.
Okay.
So I've looked at ham for a long time, and I think there is definitely applications where ham is very practical. We decided to go with Starlink instead of going with the ham for right now, just because it is satellite driven and it gives us a much larger area that we can have coverage. Whether it's even if it's text only, we can at least still text and still have outside communications. As long as the satellites are up, we have communication. I think there are applications where ham is still a viable option, especially in a vehicle where you may not have the opportunity or the ability to be able to set your Starlink up. But for me personally, I like as long as I can see the sky, I can have service wherever I'm at with the Starlink. And to me, that's one thing that sets it apart from any other system that's out there.
I agree. We got Starlink. We've got it. I think it just arrived, and we wanted to definitely have internet access. We can have communication access to a point, and it's just great. But I think ham, and we've done tons of research on this subject. We looked at satellite radios. We looked at
Satellite phones.
Satellite phones. I always say that. Why do I say that? But we've looked at satellite phones. We've looked at there's some internet-based communications to where you can use these radios, and there's a ton of different things out there, and they claim a lot of things, but they're all dependent on things. They're all dependent on satellites, or they're dependent on whatever. So ham radio is a tried and true source of communication, and we have a lot of guys that are big ham operators.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was something popped in about Baofeng. There are people that love it, but I have a really good friend of mine that has been doing ham for 40 years. And he told me, he said, buy good quality radios. They last better. There's a lot of advantages to it. The one thing about ham is you have repeaters. And so you can hit those repeaters and you can communicate with people. One thing that was big about ham is they helped tremendously with recovery efforts in the mountains and what was needed, what people were sending. Ham radio operators just pushed a ton of stuff into the mountains of Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee. So there is, to me, this is the thing. I love Starlink. I think you need to do it. I think you need to do ham too.
Mm-hmm.
Family radios and GMRS and all that, they're pretty much line of sight. Now, I love those radios for comms, especially in a security situation, where you may have to be guarding a perimeter and you don't want to have to get your cell phone out and the lights on and everything.
Definitely an application.
Yeah, there are good applications. Honestly, if we had not had cell service, we would have broke out our family radios or our GMRS radios, and we could have communicated because we've got them. They're rechargeable, and we can hook them up to our battery backup systems.
But one thing to remember, if you're doing ham and you're setting up a base station, you're going to have power for your base station. So whether it's solar or generator powered, for your ham to work, you've got to have a base station to be able to provide, and you have to have power for that base station.
It's funny. And listen, what we're talking about this storm, I'm not trying to help you to prepare for the next storm or the next week power outage.
Right.
And sometimes we get to that, says, well, I only use my generator this many times. We're preppers. We're talking about long-term grid down problems and extended problems that can go into months to years to however long. So really, get a generator. I had a good friend of mine. He is a homesteader. They have property. They grow everything. They have tons of livestock and they have all this stuff. They hunt on their property. They're just super preppers. Guess what they don't have? A generator. And they were like, well, I guess we might want to get I'm like, are you kidding me? And so they did. They bought a generator and we're kind of questioning about it.
Yeah.
Buy a freaking generator. Even if it's just a gas powered generator, there are so many things. If you have a well, you need to figure out how to, because power is what sources that. And
That's
water is vital. 3 days without water, you're going to die. So, there's so many applications for power. And then if you can do the EcoFlow, the problem with the EcoFlow is that when it clouds over, you can't, you're not getting it. You're not getting a charge. But when it's sunny, man, it fires up. One thing that and again, like we talked about, what we learned is redundancy will surprise you at how important it is to have backup systems. Guys, I know it's expensive. I know, but we pay so much in power bills every month and do all this stuff to keep our power on. Do we want to go indefinitely without it? So there you go. I hope that answered some questions, but there are some, the communications when it goes to that, there are definitely different pluses and minuses for all of them. But we've come to realize that honestly, ham and Starlink, ham is going to be probably the best overall, but it's the hardest to get together. It's the hardest to learn, hardest to deal with and all that. But yeah, you should get your license, get your technician's license, whatever, just learn how to do it. And it's going to be good.
Main man asked Don and Robbie, if assault rifles get banned due to gun control, do you think carbines will be far behind?
In my opinion, I would worry more about ammunition than I would about the guns. Yeah, it's much easier to ban components to make ammunition, like the base materials for making gunpowder or the base materials for making priming compounds. A lot of these base materials right now are not made in the United States. They're imported either from China or from India, like cellulose for your gunpowder. We don't have a cellulose manufacturer in the United States right now. All of the cellulose that we use for our gunpowder is imported. So that's a much bigger concern for me than the banning of an assault rifle. The assault rifle, as far as I'm concerned, if you don't have ammunition, it's just a glorified club at that point, and not really a good one. There's much better clubs than your assault rifle, but ammunition's a bigger concern than guns being banned. I mean, there's millions and millions of guns in this country. It would be, I'm not going to say an impossibility, but a huge improbability that those firearms would be banned on a nationwide scale. Ammunition's a much bigger concern.
Yeah, but I'm concerned. Here's the thing. I enjoy going out to the range with my AR. I enjoy having it available, that I don't have to worry about it being an illegal item that I'm going to have to use in a self-defense situation. So yes, I am concerned if things turn out the wrong way in November. And it's not just the presidency. Really, guys, the presidency is an important part. It is important. But as long as we can retain the House, if we lose the House and we get a Democrat, we get Harris in office, I'm going to be very concerned about the just gun control together. But Robbie's right. The thing is ammunition is the key component, and there are major shortages. And a lot of it has to do with the war in Ukraine, the war in Israel too. They're pulling in tons of supplies. Plus, there's a shortage on the processing level.
Right.
So, listen, I have said this so many times: is buy your ammunition now. Buy it. Yes, and it's actually come down to a okay level, to the point where you at least need to have, if you have an AR-15 and you don't have 1,000 rounds, make sure you get 1,000 rounds. And that don't take long. It don't take long to go through that. So get at least the minimum of the ammunition you need for each of your firearms. That is going to be the big thing. The other, we don't know. We'll see.
Golden Sparrow says, sorry, I just hopped on. What was the water filtration system used?
I'll have to get the name of it. It's
a reverse osmosis system.
It is. It's a triple filtered reverse osmosis system. I think we ended up ordering it off of Amazon, but it's worked very, very well. I'll get a link for it and send the link over to Don so we can post that.
And we've been using the Big Berkey for a long time. There have been some legality things about the testing back and forth. Right now, you can't even buy a Berkey filter, and I mean, they're difficult to find, but we've been using those. Now, we've been using them for, I don't even longer than that. It's probably been 12 years. We use all of our drinking water. We cook with it and everything. We have looked at some other resources. The one thing about a reverse osmosis is it takes a lot of the essential minerals. There's some things in it that it takes out. It does clean the water, and it does do, and it's good for survival, but it's going to take out some things. So, we've been kind of, it's just a big question. And the thing is water, you've got 3 days without water. So, even if you just have a Katadyn Hiker Pro or an MSR water filters, camping, even the camping type, have some way to filter your water. It's going to be really, what is it that I think about the Holy Grail for some reason. The Grail. I keep thinking Holy Grail. That's not it. The Grail system is a press system, and these are all made for getting out and hiking in the woods and doing things. But it can help produce water. Filter your water and clean it.
Well, a couple of years ago when I went to Guatemala on a mission trip, I took my Grail press with me, and that was all that I drank out of the entire time I was there, and had no issues whatsoever. And their water is not good down there.
Well, we had some friends that went to Africa, and they took the Berkey Sport bottles, and she said it was awesome all through the whole thing. So, but there you go.
Robin in Virginia asked, how many 20-pound propane tanks do each of you hope to have realistically?
We have about 7 right now, and we're adding more, but it's the 20-pounders.
Yeah.
We've got a bunch of 1-pounders because we have the Mr. Heater buddies, and we have our Coleman stoves and different things that we use. Lanterns, you can even hook that up. So we do have a number of the 1-pounders. What we're in the process of doing is having them bring out one of the big tanks, the 250, 400, 300, 500, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They're having to get that set up because they got to find the right spot for it. But we're having that brought in, and then like we talked about with you, the hot water heater, you can do that propane, your stove, even heat. So to me, again, propane's a big deal. One thing though, when you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you buy a 20-pound tank, it only has 15 pounds of propane in it. It's it's the inflation, whatever that was. What was that called? Anyway, there's a certain term that a few years ago, because the price was so high, they wanted to lower the price and they gave you less. So anyway, having propane, if you go now to a place that fills your tank, they'll fill it all the way up. So just know that if you go and buy a tank at Lowe's, you go exchange it, you're getting a 15-pound tank. So just FYI.
Yeah, we've got 5 right now, but we're adding some shelving in our shop to where we can store more, and we're going to go up to either 10 or 15 that we keep on hand at all times.
And then you can get the 100 pounds, and there's different sizes.
The 100-pounders are nice, but they're hard to move around for one person.
Yeah, they are.
Whether you're taking it and filling it or even setting it up, they're a handful.
Harris asked, sir, I know the bushcraft is not your specialty, but what is bushcraft really about?
Bushcraft is where you kind of take primitive skills to survive, and you go out and practice those skills. And you can get down to however primitive you want to get. Dave Canterbury is a big bushcrafter. I'm getting ready to go to Georgia Bushcraft event coming up in 2 weeks. And it's down in right south of Athens, Georgia, in Watkinsville. Check it out. It is a huge event. And it's not just about bushcraft. It's about even prepping and just getting outside. But the one thing about bushcrafters is making things, having your trap set up or whatever. If you want to create fire, the different methods, bow drill, but then you can move it on up to even, ferrocerium rods and how to use them, how to do that, how to filter your water. And it's just doing things like from the 1800s, but it also has a segment where, people do other things. It's really as much learning about how to live off the land as anything and survive off the land. So bushcraft is really cool. It's different than prepping because it's more just out in the wilderness survival. How can I live? How can I do building shelters, processing even meat. What kind of knife, bushcrafter knife, it's a different type knife that you want to use to clean maybe game and cook it and just things like that. And again, Georgia Bushcraft, the big fall gathering, it's coming up, not this weekend, but the next. And I will be there. I'm doing a big bug out bag seminar. They have tons of classes. So just check it out. Go to Georgia Bushcraft and you can put that in Google and you can go to the site.
I've always looked at bushcraft almost as a life skill that I feel like every young man and woman should have some basic bushcraft skills, because there's things in life that happen that those tools can really help you survive and thrive in different situations.
Yeah, I agree. It's more primitive, but
knowledge is power.
Yes.
And knowledge is strength, and it's security and comfort. And the more knowledge you have about things, and bushcraft is a big one for me, the easier, if there is a long-term issue, the easier things are going to be for you, because you know how to handle these situations.
Right. That's right.
Lucky 15 driver asks, question, is there a Sootch bundle with Exotech, particularly on the fire starting end?
No, not necessarily, but maybe I need to talk to them and we put together something. That would be cool. They do have a little tool roll. This is from Exotech. It's really nice. It's really nice. And you can put, and I like to have redundancy with my fire kits. I like to have Bic lighter. Now this is one that has the cover over it. And these are great and most convenient. But the problem is Bic lighters will go out on you. I've had them go out on me a million times. A ferro rod is excellent. Here they have matches. This is a match cap, and it has some of the waterproof lifeboat matches that you can put them in water and pick them back up and they'll catch back on fire. So having redundancy with your fire kit, all the different strikers, even butane lighters, they do a ton of cool things. So, maybe I'll have to maybe I'll have to ask them about will we do a Sootch bundle. That's a great idea. Actually, I hadn't even thought about that. So thank you. But at this point, no, and it's still 20% off, so it's a good price.
Teresa Faust asks, how do you recommend storing propane? They say not in your garage, but an unattached dwelling. But here in Texas, it gets very hot. Any suggestions?
We do store some propane in our garage, and we have outbuildings that we keep. Well, actually, most of our propane is in one of my outbuildings from the house. But
propane's very stable, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at even your big propane yards where you take your tanks to get them filled, and they've got a 10,000 gallon tank sitting out there in the sunlight that they fill from. And it's a very stable gas. It's not like gasoline where it's going to sit there and continue to build and build and build pressure until it blows your jug up. Propane is, and gasoline will absolutely do that.
Yeah.
But propane is much, much more stable than that. I'm not a huge fan of storing it in my garage. We do have a detached building that we store it in. But if your garage is all that you have, I wouldn't hesitate to store it in my garage if that was the only option that I had to be able to keep some on hand.
I mean, people keep them right outside their house, and they're
on the grill, sitting out on the deck or whatever. I mean, it's very stable.
I think the biggest danger with putting it in your garage, if you have a house fire,
mm-hmm.
You could have some problems with that, and then you'd have just a rocket launcher pretty much. But it's very stable. I'm not all that concerned about it, but I don't keep a lot in my garage, even though we do have some, mainly the 1-pounders.
Mm-hmm.
But again, to me, as far as a fuel source, it is the most stable, the most safe. And so, there you go.
Gen X Prepper says, I co-host a live show on Facebook on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. We talk about EDC, prepping, camping, hiking, mental health. I've gotten tons of knowledge from Don and Robbie over the years.
Well, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Michelle Vollmer asked, would an EMP impact Starlink? And Cindy Whitfield also asked, if an EMP hits, will Starlink still work?
Yes and no. It can. I think it's any kind of satellites that are over that area that has the intensity, but then it's according to how far out it is. It's according to the network.
The air burst, how high in the air the detonation is a big one as far as affecting the satellites, as well as affecting your equipment on the ground.
One thing that we kind of theorized together is that's one of the things about ham, because again, looking at satellite phones, we were like, okay, what happens? And sometimes those satellite phones are like 20 miles out.
Mm-hmm.
There's some that are on out that may be even less affected, but sometimes they're up close to the atmosphere. It's according to where they are. If an EMP hits, it's going to be really ugly. I mean, and then whatever you have, even your Starlink that's sitting there, the receiver may get damaged unless you have it protected in a Faraday cage or bag or whatever. And Faraday bags are going to be important. The thing is, unfortunately, we use our phones. We're doing this, that. So for me in my Faraday bag, what I like to have is some family radios, maybe ham radio, if I can, and that's if the repeaters survive it. And then having night vision or thermal, I like to put that in my Faraday bag. Things like that I don't necessarily use, but in a grid down situation would be invaluable. Emergency radios, having those little emergency radios, that's something. But I don't think that. I think the biggest problem is, even if it doesn't hit the satellite, it could fry your system.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to be in the same boat anyway. But that's why ham to me is like, and then I'd have to protect it because it also has computer board circuits. Right. It's a big question. It's a question that we've all been talking about for a while.
Be Real asked question, are you familiar with the satellite communicators, Zoliolife or Garmin InReach satellite messenger are two I've looked at? How do these differ from Starlink, or are they the same thing?
It's according to, and you may have a better answer, but it's according to what you get with Garmin. Like I have one that you can actually just send text. It's a small one. It works really well. I have, in fact, I have a couple of different ones. I even have a watch that attaches to, and it attaches. It maybe, it is a satellite based, but I think Starlink is more like you set it up and then you can get online. I mean, you can have online access. That's a big deal, especially for us and what we do. But
one of the biggest things that I've seen is like you were saying, with the Starlink system, you have the ability to access all of Starlink's thousands of satellites that they've launched into space, which gives you telecommunications as well as text and internet. Where with the Garmin units and some of the other units, they don't have nearly as many satellites in space. So there can be holes there where you can't get a signal, where you can't link up with a satellite, and you're very limited as far as what you can do with only text. With those, you're not able to actually get online or make calls. So the Starlink to me gives you a lot broader range of things that you can do and access versus just a limited text that you can send.
And the thing about text, even the satellites, with satellite phones, we were talking about it, but it still has to have a receiver on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so and that's not just Starlink, but any of them. So, that is a vulnerability with satellite phone in an EMP situation.
Brandon Anderson says, what about Midland radios? Is that good?
It's funny. I have some Midland radios that are the emergency radios, and they've been around for a long time. I even have some family radios that are Midland, and they work good. I mean, they've been around, like I say, for a good while, and they have a good reputation. But it's according to what you're getting and what you're going to use it for. But yeah, our emergency radios that are solar powered, they're hand cranked, they have rechargeable batteries. One thing that's vital, and it was like with my friends that were in Western North Carolina, some of our best friends, they didn't have any cell service, anything, and so their communication and knowing what was going on was important. When you have a blackout of information, it's like you don't know what's going on. So having some kind of emergency radio is great, but I don't know what you're necessarily referring to, but Midland is a good company.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some good success.
Mickey B asked question, with the recent situation after Helene, what was the number one thing you as a seasoned prepper missed or underestimated?
One thing that we had was assets. We had water. We had cell service. We had internet on our phone. We had a moderate temperature. Because of that, we had a level of survivability, that
And a level of comfort.
Yes. I mean, water's a big one. If you don't have water, you're in trouble. And people in Western North Carolina, they're people that do not have water. The season definitely was a big plus for us. If it had been midwinter, it would have been a lot different.
Or midsummer.
One thing, though, that we realized right off is that it was a lot of work. We don't realize it because we become accustomed to it, but all the conveniences, technology gives us conveniences. It buys us time to be busy running around doing all the things that we do that are beyond survival. When you take away those things that are about survival, you're working, you're worn out. And especially in a really bad situation, if you're having to haul water, if you're having to cut firewood to be able to heat your home, if you're having to do those things, on a long-term basis, it just gets more and more and more. So, but as far as holes, because we had the assets, we didn't have holes in those areas. We didn't need medical. We were fine. But with power, we actually felt really good about what we had. But we also saw that there were some limitations and we wanted to up that.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is we like what we have, but we can upgrade to make it even better. But really, as far as,
I think for me, the biggest hole that I saw was with communications. We rely on these things so much, and we have landlines as well, but with all the trees down, our landlines were down. Our internet was down. Our cell phones were down. It was very spotty as far as being able to make a phone call or send a text, or just get any kind of information as far as anything going on outside of our immediate area. So for me, communications, not only the ability to be able to receive communications, but to send communications and get in touch with people, was probably the biggest hole that I saw with all of our preps.
Yeah. But there are people in Western North Carolina specifically that I know of that had a house on a mountain, beautiful view, lived down there for years, even preppers that completely lost everything. Yep. The house went down the mountain. Thank God. Hopefully they were not in it. There were some people that were in those houses, and the floods and the mudslides, they had no idea that was ever going to happen. And so the other side of it is knowledge. It doesn't weigh anything. It gives you the ability. If you have some knowledge with bushcrafting is one that's definitely comes to mind. When you have nothing, you've got food stuck to the ceiling, you've got generators, this, that. When that's gone, what are you going to do then? So I think one of the biggest things is learning. Again, it weighs nothing, but it gives you the ability to survive
and take it with you wherever you go.
And listen, guys, people have been surviving on this earth since the beginning when they were created, and they were out there. There they go. And just the more that we've learned makes it a little better. But, you can do a lot more than you think,
Absolutely.
To survive.
Question, how do you structure tying prepping into financial planning? Does it come from your primary income, or does your preparation come from you, say, a dividend portfolio?
I would say that we have a budget for sure that, and we don't just go wild with our preps, but we put a priority with our budget for prepping. So like right now, we're kind of looking at, we have a spring and we have rain catchment systems. We have some different ways to be able to collect water. We have a creek, we have a pool, we have different ways, but we're thinking, we decided we wanted to look at getting a well dug. And so, it's 12 grand. And, we got to decide, is that something that we want to, do we have the money to put that toward that resource? Is it worth it to have water? And are we financially able? One thing I will highly recommend is don't stretch yourself. When I first started YouTube in 2008, now that's been 16 years I've been on YouTube. There were people on there telling people to run their credit cards up and buy food and water and guns and ammo because the end is coming and you don't have to worry about paying it back. Well, guess what? Those people are they got into a mess. And plus it was just wrong. It's just wrong. But people also, it's too late. If you hadn't already prepped, it's too late. Don't get into the fear. I said this at the beginning of the show is in Matthew, it says, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of its own problems. Worry about today. Now, today, go out and buy yourself some cans of rice and beans or some dried rice and beans, some cans of Denny Moore beef stew or whatever. It used to be you could spend $10. Now you spend $100, but just buy something and do that as you can and just add maybe that into your budget.
And with ours comes out of our primary budget, but we budget within our budget for our preps. Now, does that mean that maybe we don't go out to eat as much to be able to focus on our preps, or we cut back on some extracurricular activities to where we can focus more on our preps and our money goes further toward our preps? Yes, absolutely. Right now, especially with the economy like it is, you have to redirect and repurpose some of your money in other areas to where it provides you the most benefit. So, and that's just looking at your money and your finances and making a determination what's going to work best for you, whether you want to pull it from a dividend or IRA or anything to be able to start your preps if you're new at it and you want to get a big jump start on your preps, or if it's something that you've been doing for years and you're just adding to and continuing to grow your preps, you may look at it a little bit differently and just do that out of your primary budget.
Right. But don't run out and just go nuts and buy and buy and buy and buy, thinking in this fear that it's too late. It's too late. That is the worst. But do it systematically, but do it consistently.
That's right. Consistency is the big thing. It's the big thing. Don't wait until the last minute when the power's already out to go out and try and buy a generator, because either A, they're not going to be any, or B, they're going to be double the price. Buy these things, prepare when times are good for when times get bad, and then you have the things you need.
Right.
Joshua Cobble asks, how important is it to have a weapon system that is not dependent on batteries? I believe it is important to not have everything be battery dependent.
I agree with that.
Yep.
Now, if an EMP strikes, what is it going to take out? Or if a long-term supply shortage,
right?
And so what I like is a good scope with an etched reticle that has some illumination.
Mm-hmm.
And if the illumination goes out, guess what? You still have an etched reticle.
That's right.
And can you use a scope without, like if you have a red dot scope and it doesn't have the red dot, sure, you can use it.
Yep.
I've done it. I've gotten to the range before and went, whoop, I don't have a dot here. Let me see what I can do. And, but yes, I think that having I've always been actually very big about this. It's one of the things about a red dot sight is you pull it up, you don't have sights. So I want to have those backup sights.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a 1/3 co-witness. That's important, because what can go wrong will go wrong. What do you think?
100%. I'm in the exact same camp. I love my rifle optics that have illumination in it, but they've all got etched reticles, because if I don't have illumination, I've still got a usable optic. And rifle optics have been used for the last 100+ years. We've only had illumination in them for maybe the last 20 or 25. So, is it a nicety to have? Sure, it certainly is. But is it something that renders the optic useless if you don't have it? No, it absolutely isn't. So, and with handguns the same way. On any of my handguns that have a red dot optic on it, they've got backup iron sights.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be redundancy in anything that I do. And optics, especially on a defensive firearm, whether it's a long gun or a handgun, is going to have redundancy with my sights. The optic is great, especially the older I get.
Yeah.
The front sight gets harder and harder to see. And for any of you that wears glasses, you understand what I'm talking about, that it gets more and more difficult to see that front sight. So the red dot optic is much faster and easier and more accurate for me to be able to shoot it now. But I can still use the iron sights if I have to, and know that I'm going to be very comfortable and confident and competent with those iron sights if the red dot optic goes out.
Right.
Because I don't trust batteries. There's a chance that either the one that your site uses is suddenly unavailable. You can't get it for whatever reason. Yeah. And batteries have a shelf life. If something bad happens, those batteries may be unavailable for long term.
Short ask, have you found a solution to how to cook in a fireplace? I want to be able to use your typical cooking pots and frying pans, not necessarily specifically designed Dutch ovens.
There's several companies that actually make inserts that go into your fireplace specifically for cooking. You can do rotisseries in your fireplace. That's one of the biggies. There's different racks that you can use that go in your fireplace for cooking in different pots and different pans. So that's one thing you can do a little bit of research online, and there's a lot of stuff out there that you can get based on the size and depth of your fireplace. So you can get stuff that'll fit your particular fireplace design.
Yeah, the big thing is racks that, getting it up. One thing that I've done is over the years, anytime I had a grill that went south, we were going to toss it out.
Yep.
I take the racks off.
Yep.
I take the racks off and I have them stored because I can cook over an open fire if I needed to. And having a way to be able to do that. So yeah, there are definitely tons of different options there.
Kapolnot asks, looking at getting the BioLite system, did it work well for you all during all of this?
I cannot recommend the BioLite system enough. In fact, we're getting additional BioLites.
When our first live that we did, when we finally got internet and everything back, when I came over to do our first live before the show started, the BioLite is the one thing that Don absolutely raved about before we even started the show. He was like, dude, you've got to get you some of these. These things were absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's not just on the show. This is something that we're talking about off the show that he truly believes in and, is a tremendous product. So don't hesitate to buy those.
We're going to buy some. My parents live next door and from us, and we had to kind of see to them, they're much elderly. And so we had to get them. We're going to get them a BioLite. I'm going to get a BioLite system for here. We're going to have a couple at the house. It has a small panel and you can put it out in the sun. And because LEDs take so little wattage, and I think that's the big secret.
Yep.
And these lights are like this, and you have a little paddle, you can dim them down, you can bring them up. One thing to do is use the lowest settings that you can get by with, because that'll preserve your battery. But even on cloudy days, the BioLite picked up.
Yeah.
They use them in Africa. They use them all over in some of these rural areas that have no utilities. So BioLite, buy it. In fact, I need to call them and say, I'm going to be your best salesman because I love these things. But I did get mine on Sportsman's Guide, and it has the 3 bulbs. They daisy chain together. It has a base with a radio and a light in the base, and then you hook up your solar panel to it. Awesome. I think they're $150. Awesome, awesome, awesome. In fact, we didn't have the AC adapter because we lost it. So we couldn't even charge it up if we wanted to. It had to be solar, and it worked great, great, great. Okay. Time is up. Thanks, guys. You guys had a lot of great questions. I know I'm sure we didn't get to all of them, but we really do appreciate you guys jumping in. It's funny because our whole mission is to encourage you to take your responsibility to be prepared. It can be a storm like we just went through. It could be whatever. I mean, there's so many different threats. And guys, right now in the world today we're living in, my gosh, get yourself in good shape. Get yourself prepared. And the election is coming up. And I was at a gun show this weekend, and it wasn't as packed, but all the guys there that are gun dealers said, we're waiting after the election. We know it's going to go nuts if it goes in a certain direction. So get yourself some ammunition. If I can't tell you, get yourself some ammunition. Make sure that you have a sufficient supply. I'm not saying go out and buy thousands and thousands of rounds. Get yourself a sufficient supply of ammunition and start buying your food up. Just go pick up a little food here and there and just put it back and buy stuff that you're going to eat anyway. So all that being said, we could go on all day. You want to go on? We can go another hour. No, I'm just kidding. Also, again, check out Exotech, best fire starters on the market down in Winder, Georgia. They have great, excellent quality, very creative, very innovative fire starting, the best on the market. And you get 20% off using Sootch 20 with the link down below in the description. And we really appreciate Exotech for being one of our sponsors. And also Big Robbie Wheaton. We just really appreciate him being here as always and bringing a unique perspective. Check out Wheaton Arms. Also check out the Robbie Wheaton YouTube channel. And the link will be down below in the description. And also just if you need any kind of gun work done, I mean, RMRs, cuts, threaded barrels, just all kind of different things. Robbie is a master at that, and he stays really busy. But
parts for your Glock Polymer 80 PSA dagger, we make a ton of parts for those. And you know, my personal opinion, we have the best trigger on the market.
Oh no, you definitely. That's my opinion too. Those things are the best. The Glock trigger, flat face trigger. Also, big thanks to Sarah Mack for handling the questions. We really put her through the ringer today, and you guys did great. Thank you so much. So, guys, just be prepared. Don't be scared. Be prepared. Be strong. Be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.